Hey, Mike, how's it going, man?
Good, Frank. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's been, what, a whole week?
A whole week since
Whole
we've
week.
been back
Yeah,
in these
true.
positions, right?
Yeah, just sitting here. Actually, I haven't moved since last Wednesday. I just sat here.
Enjoying yourself?
I'm a path least resistant type of guy, you know? Why leave the chair when I'm going to be back here?
I like your style, my
it's
friend.
kind of like, why do you make the bed when you're going to go back into it? Yeah, I don't argue for that.
The little things.
Yeah, I jump out of bed and make it really quick. Yeah.
So, what do you feel like dabbling in tonight, my friend?
I don't know. We'll see where this world takes us, this feeling, this energy. You know, this is something that actually, it's kind of what the human mind, I feel, gravitates towards in trying to understand this world. And it's in the principle of understanding of synchronicity.
Okay.
So it always shows up. It's synchronicity actually creates a sequence in which we understand a story or something. We start to see things happen. Like, I'll tell you a funny story today.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I'm at work in Shanna. One of my colleagues that works for me, and she, we have one of those Alexas, and I saw it spinning, and a lot of times she'll connect her phone to it.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure if it was something I ordered or whatever. And she goes, no, I think my phone's connected. I'm like, okay, you obviously have a message. She goes, oh, I ordered this eye necklace to ward off evil spirits and stuff like that.
I love it.
Yeah, I started laughing. So I was like, oh, really? I'm like, kind of like, like that.
Hell yeah.
And then I told her a story about Karen, how like we were in, I think we were in Hawaii. We were walking to a restaurant. And it's like, we'd never been to this particular restaurant. And she's like, if you ever leave me, don't ever bring a woman here. And then she spits on the ground. I curse the floor you walk on. And so I told Shanna that story because that's what reminded me. So then later on, I go to the gym before we actually started doing this podcast. And Karen was there. And I saw her in the gym. And she had this necklace I'd never seen before with an eye on it.
That's funny.
It is funny because there's a synchronicity, like, and you see the connection, but yet I don't know the causations of why the connections are happening, but it allows me to keep moving and building up the story, but not try to anticipate what's supposed to happen. And synchronicity is one of those principles that allow me to walk into the unknown comfortably, knowing. So it's like a signpost. Like if I was driving somewhere, like I always use the example of living in Phoenix and going to San Diego. Now, if I've never been there before, there's a moment in time when, you know, from where I live, it's roughly about a half hour till you make it to the I-8. And on I-8, right when you hit I-8 from, you know, where we are, you'll see a sign that says San Diego, 290 or 89 miles. So you're not in San Diego, but it's letting you know you're on the right path. So that's what synchronicity does. And what is the right path? The right path is having a belief and moving in synchronistic with it. The path never ends. It keeps expanding. But so often, people will have a belief on something, but not trust it and move in the opposite direction. And then they'll think, oh, it didn't work. Like I use the example, if I'm driving west, but I'm looking over my, throughout the back window of my car, east, and later on, I wonder why I ran into a tree, and I mistakenly think I shouldn't have had west. And the truth was, no, you weren't focused on west. You were focused on east. So if you take a belief and actually work it and move with the belief, all of a sudden the synchronicity will end up in your lap to show you the signposts that just keep going. It always works. We just don't know how, and that's the fun. Like the funny story is me telling Karen that story, and also me telling Shauna that story about Karen spitting on the curse in the ground I walk on. if I dare to step in there with another woman.
See, I love that type of stuff because I look at synchronicities as just little breadcrumbs, if you will, of yes, what you're experiencing is your thoughts and your emotions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like you were saying, there's no purpose or there's no reason to why what happened, but you know that these events are connected. And us trying to give purpose
Yeah.
two things is ridiculous on its face.
Well,
you know what I mean? Because these events, these coinciding, synchronistic coincidences, nothing is a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's just showing us the connection between the mind, the thought, the feeling, the focus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's what it is. Right now in human existence, to the understanding of how we experience this, we're not really supposed to know. But like, what is the meaning in life? Well, from a corporeal mindset, it's to give it meaning. But there's a deeper meaning that we really don't know what it is, but we have to be okay with it. So those breadcrumbs are letting you know you're moving in the right direction. You don't really necessarily need to do it, but you see the sequence. I'm like, okay, there's some sequential thing happening here, so let's keep going, see where it takes me. And that's the brilliant thing. But you don't want to know, because it would be like walking into a movie that you already know. It's like, I don't want that. Yeah, I want to choose the theme of the movie I'm going into. I don't want to, hopefully it's not a horror movie. You know if it's a horror movie or a comedy or a drama. You know it. You're stepping into it. But you don't know the sequence that's going to happen. That's why you're there. And this is how life is supposed to be lived. So synchronicity in those little things, in the little stories that pop up, that's the brilliant moments. That's when I laugh, because I realize we're heading in
You
this
see it
right
all
direction.
connected.
Yeah. And it all has to do with how I'm feeling, not whether I'm doing something right or wrong per se, but it's how I'm feeling. I'm like, oh, the synchronistic thing happened. Or what was I doing prior to that? I'm like, nah.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean when I'm saying it's all mind. These different events, sure, something can happen that will lead to this, etc. But the story you're creating about that is simply a story. It's a narrative. It's mental commentary. So rather than taking these synchronistic moments and saying this is because of that, see that for the mind that is as it is. The synchronistic moment, that feeling, the knowing, that's you seeing, oh my goodness, this is all connected.
Yeah, it's like the present on Christmas morning opening up. Even though you asked for it, you're really not certain when you're a child. You're not really certain what's in that box.
No meaning
like, oh
put onto it, no
Yeah.
purpose
Yeah.
attached to it. Just simply,
Yeah.
this is all connected.
And you don't need to think about it. It just appears. Yeah.
Yep.
But then it's like, you're not going to believe this story. And then it compels you to then amplify the energy by reiterating the story, how you got there. But it's like, wow, it's interesting how that happens. I'm like, that's how everything happens. We just don't recognize it.
I love that you said that, because it's true. Everything is spontaneous.
Yeah.
Yes, there are certain events and habits that we do that make things very likely to occur.
Yeah.
But truly,
Well, think
everything is spontaneously
Yeah.
now.
Think about this. You spontaneously fall asleep. You spontaneously wake up. No one knows when they wake up, and no one knows when they fall asleep. You don't. You can think during the day, I know I'm doing this, and no, you get into a sync, into a rhythm, but everything is spontaneous. And we often label spontaneous something that just comes out of nowhere, where we're seeing a sequence in a linear perspective, but yet each sequence onto itself is spontaneous. Any moment I could change direction and have a spontaneous moment, but even if I stay forward in the moving direction I'm going, it's still one spontaneity after another, billions of times per second.
That's funny, because you're right. Perception, we perceive in this body in a linear.
Yeah.
That's how we project, perceive.
Yeah, and that's part of the physical world. So it's not about, me and Mike aren't here to tell people disassociate from that. But when you understand the principles, you actually get into it. It's like when you understand the sport and the rules and regulations within the sport, you just simply play the sport at a higher rate, at a more valued rate, or a greater rate. But if you don't understand the rules, like you're running over, like, what am I supposed to be doing? And so when you don't understand the principles and the rules and the laws of the game, it makes the game somewhat very difficult. So we're coming into, and there's so many other principles and laws in the physical world that we're opening up to. Or you could say, if someone says, well, there's 7 principles and 4 laws. I'm like, okay. But within those 4 laws and 7 principles, depending who you talk to, there are sub-laws, sub-principles within that, or more intricate aspects as we go along. So, like, kind of what you hear is like, shoot for the stars and be excited when you reach the moon. And what I mean by that is,
I think that's flipped around.
No.
I think it's shoot for the moon and be happy if you land among it, and then you'll at least land amongst the stars, right?
Well, the projection is the stars are further than the moon.
Oh.
So, in other words, if people are shooting for the moon, like in other words, and I'm saying this in a way that you set forth out, but be excited about every step you take along the way. If you only get excited when you hit the star, you're missing the point. Mm-hmm. So the moon is a step along the way to the stars.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean it stops there, but be excited that the stars allowed me to move to the moon. You know, because if your focus is the moon and there's nothing in between, you might not reach there. So it's kind of like shoot for the stars, but enjoy everything in between, because the sequence that we experience, a little experience of what we call travel or movement, is all for a reason. We don't want to just, boom, end up somewhere, because the purpose of going somewhere and doing, like the purpose of sitting down with a meal is the purpose of eating. So you don't want to sit down and click your heels and wake up in the morning. You want the experience. So people are always trying to get through things quickly. I'm like, why? I want to go to dinner and finish dinner early. I want to get here. I want to get home. To do what? So I can go home and get to sleep. And then I sleep. I want to wake up. And then what? Like, where are we going?
We have nowhere to be.
We have nowhere to be other than the present moment. And the present moment has everything to offer. So when I say shoot for the stars and be excited when you hit the moon, it's the object or the experience before you hit the stars. But from the moon, then you just keep going.
I like how you say that too, because it is important to live it as if it has already occurred, and to know it, because that is that mind-heart coherence that's getting the body in sync to experience ultimately the reality you would like to. Because ultimately, broken down, we are experiencing our thoughts and our emotions, and it's playing out, in real time in what we're calling reality.
Yeah.
And we're all experiencing a very individualized world, and we all have different projections, etc. With that being said, when you see the operating system and you see this all at work, it's like being aware that you are now part of the play. And that's really where Frank and I are getting at with all this, is we want you to see the canvas, the world as the canvas it is. We are an energy, we are light, and we are projecting onto this world, and then we're calling it reality. And we're saying, this is what this is.
Yeah.
But our deep connection, us being that one consciousness, that collective consciousness, that is why this reality seems very real, and why we can operate, this is one road and I take this road. How do we all know this road? Yeah, we're all sharing a collective experience, but we're also very much so experiencing in an individual way.
Yeah, the reality is how we feel about something. And so, like, even we look at the physical reality when something appears, like this mug or something else, or say this microphone. All right, prior to the microphone appearing, someone had to imagine a sound system such as a microphone and a PA system to project a voice outward. They probably were in an echo chamber, and it's like, how do I do this anywhere? Well, someone had to imagine what it would be like to do that, and what in the field of imagination, it offers up a frequency, what we call a feeling. And when you actually immerse yourself in the feeling, it will then show you the intricate things to do or the path to take in which the physical thing will then come to manifest. So everything that we experience was once imagined prior to his experience. So what is reality? Reality is the frequency or the feeling we have towards something, and then we project it. Now, most of us, and even, we do it all day long. Like, I don't have to get a brand new car every day, but when I step into my car every day, I'm just reiterating a frequency, but it keeps changing, keeps wavering, such as the miles go up. It's like, oh shit, this, based on how you're programmed to think about a car, right? People are like, how many miles you got on the car? Like, right? Like, why does that matter? Because it shows the value of the car, right? Like, how old is that person? Oh, they're getting old. Yeah, they lose some value. You know,
Such a
and I'm like,
condition.
but that
Way too
empirically true. That doesn't really hold the value of the car, because if there's a guy that can have like a 1956 Chevy, and he'd be like, there's not much value in that car. But I'm like, you ever look at it like cherry? It's like, bam, that's nice. So when you look at that, you don't ask the guy, say, hey, how many miles you got? I got 50 million miles on this baby.
Seriously.
It's like, so there is something funny about like how we value things. But the measurements are indications, and from the physical aspect of what we call fleeting or deterioration stuff, there is a value there. We understand this. I'm not taken away from that. But everything is fleeting. That's why as time goes on. But when you really look at it, like when I get in my car and drive it, I set the standard of how I want to feel about it. But once I start looking at the outside world for the reflection of how I ought to feel about it, this is when life gets shady. This is when life gets a little squirrely, because somebody else is telling me how I ought to think about it. And I'm like, no, we're all here feeding from the one source energy and having a separate experience with that. It's not, are we one or individual? We're one and individual at the same time. Just like the band members, each individually playing an instrument, but they're playing one song, And so it's both at the same time. So when people often ask, as we're getting to this higher understanding, it's never this or that, it's this and that. Are you conservative or liberal? I'm conservative and liberal. I breathe in and I breathe out. Do you breathe in or do you breathe out? I'm like, yeah.
I'm only in, man. Never out.
So
Never
everything is either this and that, or everything is this or that. You can't have it. People like to play these games in subsections. Oh, this works over here, that works over there. Well, what's interesting is you had a group of scientists, everything from Niels Bohr to Einstein, we got into the idea of quantum physics, that there was a moment in time where science was okay with this weird energy field going over here, and they separated from this physical world in which Newton showed us in classic physics. But Einstein's like, no, there's got to be a correlation, a connection. You can't separate the two. Because the math that they use, like for classic physics, everything from like calculus and stuff like that, geometry to show how we do the physical world, well, doesn't really apply in quantum physics. So Einstein's like, how do we connect the two? Because they can't be separate. So it's not this or that, it's this and that. And then Einstein and obviously several other, Niels Bohr and other physicists of the time came to that understanding. It's not this or that, it's this and that, how it explains itself. So when you dive into that and you really want to live a seamless life, so to speak, in this world, start to grab that concept. I am not this or that. I am both.
Going back to what you were saying about how we value certain things and how we must put, an idea on it. What that is, that's the mind, guys. That's the mind at work classifying. So how the mind is simply, a tool. And so it classifies and it assigns the meaning. This means that. This is how you feel here. This is this. Mm-hmm. So when you, just like the values we put on anything, we must realize what the mind is and what it's doing. It's categorizing, it's assigning, and then it's repeating. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the way we use language. We assign meaning and emotion to certain words. And when those words come up, we allow them to physically trigger our emotional reaction to certain things based on...
Or some phrases these days.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
It's funny. You can mention one word and people are like, holy shit.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's very much so I guess the best way to kind of say it is words are very clumsy. Frank, you say that all the time, and I love that saying.
Well, my words are clumsy because I mumble.
But when we're communicating, words are simply kind of the details that we use to relate and describe the emotion and the feeling which is already occurring.
Yeah, because it happens a lot with me when I'm having a conversation. I'm going to bring Karen into this one. And I'll have like a feeling about something. She'll ask a question, and I'll have a feeling about it, and then I try to explain it. Now, I already know the explanation of it, so I don't need to explain it to myself. It's like I don't need to explain why pizza tastes good. I already know it does. But then we like to get into the act. That's why me and Mike have the show. How do I explain the concepts and ideas we're coming to experience and know, and then further know without really needing to know everything? We're trying to have this conversation here, but sometimes it becomes very clumsy, and sometimes you have to get to the point where the person's like, I'm not understanding it. And it's like, well, I don't understand why pizza tastes good. I'm like, well, just take a bite and you'll know. There is a moment in time where words have to step aside. Just like a sign that says, points to the beach. Well, the sign is not the beach. And if you're on the beach, the one thing you don't need is a sign. Because you're there. You're there.
Which we all are.
Yeah. So the signs in the conversation are signposts. It's to lead you to a direction. And when you're there, that's when silence and stillness appear. I need the sign to point me towards the beach, but once I touch the sand and feel the air and hear the crashing, I no longer... Can you imagine you go in the water and there's a sign that says beach? It's like, no shit. You're there.
I'm finally there.
Oh, thank God. I didn't know. But if you weren't at the beach, the sign can direct me towards the beach. And when I'm there, I'm like, I don't need a sign anymore. And this is what we're getting at. This is what we do. Like, we meditate.
This
like,
is the
feeling.
feeling.
Me and Mike meditate right before we do this talk. You know?
Yeah.
I know he meditates every day.
Oh, yeah.
As well as I. And it's to get to that place where there is no thought. Even if it's a split second, a nanosecond, I don't care. If I go 20 minutes and all I get is this little bloop.
You know.
Yeah.
You know.
It's amazing. You know, it's like plugging into a supercharger. 1 second can fill my energy field for the day. You know, but I give myself 20 minutes to figure that out.
But that's simply yeah,
it is. But so we get to a point where words, and that's what we're doing here is me and Mike, we're having this discussion amongst ourselves, and we're obviously recording it so that people could join in. But me and Mike here are utilizing this for our personal advantage to expand upon. So we talk about something. I like the way that sounds. And then I go and I experience it. And then when I experience it, there's more to it. Oh my God, now there's more to talk about. Once you eat the pizza, then the conversation begins. But when the argument begins in the conversation, that's the moment when you have to step off and jump into the water. Otherwise, I'm like, hey, just trust me or don't trust me. It's up to you, but the conversation must end. So you can actually start to end all arguments that way if you trust it. Because we're trying to get people to do different things, and like, it's not my job to get anyone to do anything. But if you're trying to understand me through a conversation, that may never happen. You can see the direction in which I may be moving through my conversation, but you're not going to understand the beach by looking at a sign that says the beach. There's no understanding. Those are letters with an arrow. What is the beach? Some people say, it's sand, water, and wind. I'm like, yeah, but the beach is, you know.
See, what Frank's talking about and describing right there.
I don't even know what I'm talking about.
But we're, when you're trapped in kind of a very personhood and a very self-identified
mind state.
Yeah, mind state. You have these thoughts of, as soon as I get rich, then I will be happy. As soon as I have this, then I will be happy. So that is, yes, you're caught in a pattern. But the same thing can happen to you in the spiritual sense by saying, as soon as I meditate, I will feel better. As soon as I implement this, I will be better. And what Frank and I are talking about is, no, it's just now.
Yeah. Because those moments...
It's letting go of having to do anything. There is nothing to do.
Like in telling the story earlier when I related to Karen because she had the necklace on, it's the same spontaneity I had when I was utilizing my mantra to fall to that place where I no longer have a mantra. It was the same spontaneous moment or burst of something.
It's seeing the connection.
Yeah, it's like stepping on the beach or eating pizza for the first time or even for the millionth time. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, right?
It's
like,
seeing
wow.
the sunset. It's
Yeah.
not describing the sunset because that's the mind assigning a color,
Yeah.
a thing, a
Yeah.
this. No, it's just
Yeah, how do you explain that?
it's sunset. And even the word sunset
Yeah.
is taking away from the greatness.
Yeah.
Because then you're labeling it and you're putting it in a box.
Yeah, so it's yeah, and as we soften up this understanding, so to be on the same plane of identification and talking about stuff, it's like somebody like, what's your name? Well, the name they gave me is Frank, but I'm not really Frank. Although sometimes my actions are frank. Yeah, a little side joke there. Yeah, I just want to be frank with you. But I remember saying that to Karen one time. Like, I just want to be frank with you. This was before we were dating. And then
She loved it.
Well, what's funny is she wouldn't say anything. But when we started dating, she's like, I just got to tell you something. I'm like, what? She's like, when I was talking to you one time, you would always say, hey, can I be frank with you? And then she would think, but you are frank.
That's
I'm
funny.
like, oh my God, that's like a Beavis and Butthead thing.
That is funny, though.
That was coming out of Karen. I thought it was brilliant. So
That's
I no
awesome.
longer say, can I be frank with you? Because I just become frank. But nonetheless, when you say like, like if you have a child and you see a bird, don't say that is a bird or a blue jay. Say son or daughter. That's what they call a bird. So when you say that, it leaves a distance or an opening from not labeling, but yet you want to have some bit of identification to steer you towards something. So this is what we call a sun or a sunset. But that's not really what it is. What is it? I'm like, I don't know. It's a bunch of it's a high output frequency that's creating plasma. But even that is labeling it. Exactly. This is what they call it. So it just is. You just look at it.
Everything just is. That's what Frank and I are really getting at.
Yeah.
It's everything just is.
Yeah. So when people, and a lot of times people that want you to explain something to them, they already have their definition to it. So no one says, hey, I want to ask you advice on something. They already imprinted the output in which they might want you to hear, or they already have one, or else they wouldn't even ask you that question. So when they do, your output onto them either better match or come close, or in their idea, excel it for them to let go of this. If not, the argument begins. And that's how arguments begin, because
that's just the mind simply at work.
Yeah. So,
we get an impression, and when you find yourself in any position saying something ought to be a certain way, that's when you pull back and you see, whoa, why should this be that way?
Yeah.
Why does this start to catch the mind? Because the mind won't stop. The mind's going to say, come, just over this hill.
Yeah.
Just over this hill. Come. Then you'll be at peace.
Yeah.
And that won't ever stop.
It's almost like this.
50, 60, 70, 80. Oh,
yeah.
I'm the one that stops it.
Like, here's another way of looking at it, and this is not even empirical either, but like from the way we standardize or do things. So say you're going on a date with someone you never went on a date, and you want to get to know them, see if you're in sync with them. You could sit there and do the old school way. So, where did you go to school? Where did you grow up? Or you can tell a joke. And right then when they laugh, you know everything. You know everything you almost need to know, because then it just sets the tone. So you don't start out by doing it. You just say a joke, and if they don't laugh, you know everything.
This is not going well.
Check. Yeah. Rather than ask the question, because what happens is when I ask you a question, when I ask somebody a question outright to try to get to know them, they're already saying, how do I want to sound?
Exactly.
You ask me a question, I'm going to put the best perspective of me in forward. But that might not really be like when you take these standardized tests or tests to show you like, what you should be doing. What do they call those?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, like
it does have a name.
What kind of job you're supposed to have and stuff like that.
A career aptitude test.
Aptitude test, thank you.
Yeah.
So when you do it, I'm asking a question like, who do I feel like being today? And I've done this before, and I answer the questions, and like every time I look at it, I would be something different. People are like, well, you're not doing it right. I'm like, no, because I'm aware of my thoughts are just that. The answer is just that. I can change my output any moment I want. So therefore, I can do,
But it's funny. We're kind of doing an aptitude test every day. We're putting ourselves in boxes every day. Oh, I can't do this because I never went to college or went to this.
Yeah.
No. You can do anything.
Well,
truly.
Yeah, you can do anything. But it's already going to be in the sequence of who you are.
Of course, but so that's you again trying to make yourself force something. We're never saying force.
No.
Path of least resistance.
Yeah.
But there is nothing that can't be done. And that's what's cool. These concepts that Frank and I are discussing.
And one of those things is doing nothing.
Which is usually the answer to everything.
I do it so well.
Usually the answer to everything.
What did you say? Nothing.
But I look at these concepts that Frank and I discuss as the skeleton key to life. Because that's what this is.
They're the principles that... And when you actually talk about them and conceptualize them and intellectualize them, wow, people are like, oh my God, that sounds good. But now you have to go forth and practice it. So looking at the sign that says beach doesn't experience the beach for you.
So when Frank and I say, let go, I totally butchered that. When Frank and I say just be, what we mean is let go. And
but you didn't butcher it. You just said it in reverse.
I love this. My brother asked Frank one time, what is the most simple way to let go? And without skipping a beat, no thought whatsoever comes out of Frank's mouth, grab onto something else. And I love that because it's such a simple technique that was so well put, because that's what the mind is. What you're holding on to is what's getting heavy and dragging you down. And until you grab on to that unknown next item, you will forever be carrying this weight with you of stories, of narrative. All it is, guys, is it's mental commentary. That's really what we're battling through every day. To say it very simply, you are battling you are in a tango, in this dance with your mind. It is a mental commentary. From the moment you wake up, I must do this, that. If I don't do this, then this will happen, and then I will lose my family. And then I will, you know what I mean? Our mind.
I'll be living in a dumpster.
My business is going to crumble on me if I don't get up and do this. All of this is just noise, and this is why I meditate in the morning.
Yeah, because think about this. So
I'm aware of what this is, and I understand it is not I. It is not self. It is not the experience, the spirit, the energy source that I am. It is a conditioned thought pattern that I have developed from going to school, being raised in a specific Western culture, etc. Different projections of what a man should be in this in America, what is expected, what is defined as success. These are all projections that I can now see as as long as I can remember. I have been carrying around the ideas and projections of my parents, my friends, family, my government, my school teachers, thinking that if I appease them, I will at some point find peace or find abundance within myself, find a sense of self-worth.
Yeah. When you start to understand this and actually utilize the principles and start to understand the principles, you still go to school. You still act kind to your family, your friends, your teachers. You do all that. It doesn't mean you disassociate, because that becomes this or that. We're going back to this and that. But you do it at a different level. Like...
An emptiness is within you.
Yeah. Well, it is, because you don't hold on. Like, I don't hold on to... Like, if I get into a conversation with someone, and I do this, I fall into this, especially with Karen, and she'll have a viewpoint, and sometimes I try to challenge my mind, and I mistakenly do it with her, where I want to challenge my mind and try to work on the opposite end of it. But I don't really mean to do that. But what I realize in other settings where people I don't know, well, I don't want to upset anybody. So when they have a belief and they were like, oh, and they want to share it with me, I'm like, oh, it's interesting. And I think to some degree they think I believe the same thing. I may or may not, but I don't lead on to either way because their belief in how it is doesn't affect me one iota because I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I may agree with them on some line, but I don't argue with them and tell them they're full of shit because we know the principle. If I believe something, I'm going to find evidence to it. And that's within, and then within that field of the principle of polarity, every truth that I have, and if I say this is true, the equal and opposite truth is on the other side of that pole. And that I already know, so why would I argue anymore? But I still get caught up in that in certain avenues. And, I'm still working on that principle. But when I actually can get into a conversation and listen to someone, just almost like, how an adult will listen to like a 3-year-old tell you about something they learned in school. You wouldn't be like, nah, you didn't get the whole story there, kid. It's not really what happened with the Indians. You wouldn't do that. You would let the kid finish the story and like agree with them because you realize it's useless to argue because they have their viewpoint onto it. Now, we are acting like we are children and we should act that way. So we go forth, Now, when someone has a viewpoint that is somewhat startling to them, that's taking them down, you could tell that they're not feeling good about it. That's when I step in and try to steer a perspective onto them. You ought not to think that way because that doesn't hold any ground. But I'm like, yeah, but do you like the way that feels? Like, no. Do you think there's something else out there? And then I offer different other perspectives. But if somebody's feeling good about their belief, I don't need to offer a perspective. That's ridiculous. But if someone's not feeling good about their belief, I'm like, yeah, there's equal and opposite belief on the other side. In the world of what we call understanding of the choice of free will, you can choose that other perspective onto the same item. The laws allow it. Physics allows it. So we'll argue something, say this is how it is, and that's how it is. Well, those are half-truths. The empirical truth, as we said, all truths are true. But what is the truth that you're seeking? What is the truth that you want? And stop and leave everyone else alone. Only in politics do you need 51% of society to agree with you in order for you to take control over that 51%, actually the 100%. I don't need anyone to agree with my viewpoint on a certain thing for me to live comfortably with it or to live supremely with it. I also don't offer up on a soapbox my opinion on certain items because I also know that there are opposite and equal value to the other argument. And I'm like, I'm not here to argue. I'm here to live within a principled world. I live by principles. But what is the definition of principles? There is principles of different principles such as polarity and these other principles we talk about. Principle of frequency. Is a multitude of different principles, and not jump into my head right away, but I live by those, but I don't go by a set of principles that someone said I ought to live by. Although someone might have a set of principles and they coexist with mine. Mine aren't better, mine aren't worse. But I live within the field of my own principles. And what happens, though, what's interesting is, unless I start to argue with someone, people are like, oh, I like the way you conduct yourself. It's like, yeah, because I don't get emotionally torn by something. But when I'm talking to people and they offer up different viewpoints, that helps expand my perspective. I'm not just sitting there listening to them like they're an idiot and just like, I hope this conversation ends. I'm literally looking for some aspect in this conversation I'm having with everyone to find the unified field in everything. So if I'm reading a book on theology or on quantum physics or biology or anything, I'm not trying to get on the pulpit to be a theologist in a new church or something. I'm not trying to be a quantum physicist or a mathematician or a biologist. I'm trying to find the unified field in all those stories, and there is always one. There's always a unified field. It might not be the expression in which they come across. But you see the correlation and getting back to, the dovetailing back into what we started is, it's the synchronicity I'm always looking for. And it always hits me like I never see it coming. And that's what I love. It's like the movie Sixth Sense. Did not see that coming.
Yep.
And that's why we love the movie. Oh my God, see that? I didn't know he was dead. Mm-hmm. And then someone's like, what do you mean he was dead? Wait, did you not finish the movie?
Did you see the end?
Oh, I was getting popcorn.
I like that.
I get that he died. He's died. But yeah, that's what we're looking for. So when you get into a conversation, know with someone, if they have a belief and it's like, oh, I don't believe in that. So what? But the universe would have never placed you in the field of the conversation if you weren't going to get something grand out of it. But if you say, I don't want to talk to that person, they don't agree with me, I'm like, now you're singing to the choir, and you're not going to learn a new song that way. You will not expand your experience if you're always talking to the same people that have the same viewpoint as you. That's not expansion. That's what dwarfism. I'm making up new words. It's dwarfism. Dwarfism. It's, I got that language thing going on. It's New York and
words are clumsy anyways.
Yeah, and I really make them clumsy. I make up words all the time. Webster keeps calling me, hey, dude, what are you doing? You got to stick to the book, right?
So these moments that Frank and I talk about, they're very much just moments of letting go and being and simply being present without having to reiterate that word. So people are always like, what is this, etc. So people will go out and they'll take drugs like mushrooms or acid, right?
Those aren't drugs; those are plant-based medicines.
They truly are. And I see this happen. And they
Xanax is a drug.
Seriously, that's a real drug.
Yeah.
They come out with these drugs, and people will take these drugs and they explain this. Oh, I had this awakening, etc. No, what they're experiencing is something that we can all access all the time, and especially through a means of meditation. A quieting of the mind, because
or a near-death experience as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't suggest that, by the way.
So what they're accessing with these drugs is a state of presence. It's, oh my God, my hand. I've never seen my hand like this. That tree, it's alive. It's breathing. All of these states are simply being accessed because that drug, that chemical, is stopping the thinking mind. It's stopping the analytical mind. It's stopping us from assigning meaning and keeping up this charade that we're always got bumping in the back of our heads. So know that this state of presence is absolutely something you can accomplish without any type of drug.
But that being said, we came here to experience the world. So, like we talked about this last time. We talked about it several times in what we call the placebo effect. So, even meditation then becomes the permission slip of placebo to get there.
Absolutely.
So, if mushrooms is what you want to take, make sure you fully believe that it's not going to harm you. Make sure you fully believe that you're protected when you go to it. I'm not condoning or dissing himself, but everything then becomes a placebo. Because what is the true causation? The true causation is beyond the scope of the understanding that I can even talk about.
I just want people to know these levels can be achieved without the use of drugs.
They can, but if you need to, like in certain cultures, they'll use like these ceremonial things. Like Native Americans will use peyote, and they use it at a certain age, and the person goes in to utilize the peyote will then have a vision, and that's the vision they're supposed to. I don't fully know, but that's the vision they're supposed to seek out for the rest of life without necessarily taking the peyote. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like getting the psilocybin rush in the brain is what we call it, will take you beyond the physical structure of the world we live in. And then when you come back, how do I get there from here? Well, we know the mushroom can get you there. But how can you get there without the mushroom? And it's kind of like what the Beatles went through when they started experimenting with acid and LSD. And it was, it was more to advance or expand their ideas because they're musicians and artists. And they ended up going through Maharishi Mari Yogi in order to, and he taught him, I can get you there to transcendental meditation. But again, then transcendental meditation becomes...
let me show you another way to get there. I love that.
But even that becomes the new acid. See what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all...
Yeah. You don't have to cop from a dealer. You just sit down and do it.
Absolutely.
But,
our body produces DMT.
Yeah, it does. Well, yeah, exactly. It's a frequency.
Yep.
So DMT is a frequency that we can achieve from multiple ways. But if you feel...
That's that out-of-body...
Yes. But what I'm saying is it's not necessarily wrong or you're doing something wrong if you have to take the mushroom or whatever, ayahuasca, which creates the DMT as well. There's nothing wrong with the experience. But when you think it was ultimately that thing, it's like, no, that was part and parcel of it, but that was the permission slip which created the placebo. But there's something deeper going on that's the true causation, and the conversation me and Mike are having here can never lead us to it. Just like there comes a point where you have to stop talking and just bite into the pizza and like, huh?
Exactly.
Or look at the sun, like, huh? You look at the sun with somebody else, there's no words, you just look and smile.
I can paint a sunset, I can tell you about a sunset, but unless you sit there and see it,
you have no idea.
You have no idea.
You have no idea.
And that's what Frank's talking about right there. And the same thing, guys, I'm not saying, you don't need drugs to access this. Like, don't do drugs. No, get out and do drugs. Do whatever. There is no such. Well, no, I want people to know there's no such thing as good or bad. And so, like, if you think my government says I'm not allowed to do this, so I'm not going to, you are missing out on life.
Yeah, but know this. If your belief believes that, do not dishonor it. That's how we get in trouble.
That's true, because then your mind, your body, you're not in coherence, and you're going to experience something. You'll experience an accident. You'll experience something you don't want to experience.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to be very careful, because I've seen people talk about this.
I just don't want them to think we're like, these are illegal and you can access it a different way. And it's like, no, that's not what we're saying.
There was an incident several years ago in Colorado. It was a high school in Colorado. I forget the name of the high school, where these people came in, and it was like a assembly, and they were talking about different stuff. And one of the things they talked about was drug use. And they're dealing with teenage kids that were raised a certain way, and most of them were Judeo-Christianity.
Okay.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you can't... So if you start telling these kids that go out and take drugs, I'm like, you don't know how that kid believes. Mm-hmm. So the kid might be in a whim, take a drug and have a bad trip, or get into a car and drive and kill himself. We are not condoning this.
Never.
You have to actually get your belief around it to actually have the ultimate experience. Again, you don't want to do drugs? Do meditation. I don't condone any of that, because your belief has to be around it, or else you will get in trouble, because we are slave to our beliefs, and there's nothing wrong with that. You have to honor your belief. If you don't honor your belief, this is where we get in trouble. So again, it's like my belief is I'm heading west. But if you're looking at the rearview mirror and looking east,
how can you ever go west?
Well, you'll go west, but you'll hit a freaking tree or run into another thing, and then all of a sudden, this is what I'm talking about. So if someone just dares you to take drugs, you're moving west, but yet your parents taught you east. That's the problem. It isn't the problem of your parents. It isn't the problem of the drugs. They're not meshing.
Exactly.
So the people that are getting to a place where they're having great experience with this, their belief led them there.
Exactly.
There was an incident also too with a gentleman up in Sedona several years ago who got these people in a sweat lodge, and several people died. Now, where the callousness was on his part, he was trying to expand their experience and expand their mind and let go of the physical body. Yes, that can be achieved. But what he failed to realize is that wasn't his first time in the sweat lodge. So maybe the first time he was in there, he only could withstand it for 5 minutes. But he didn't give that effort. He didn't give that to the other people who died. They believed in him so much, they stayed in there and they died. The thing is, when someone goes into a sweat lodge, you might be going for 5 minutes. Then you're up at the 10. Now you're going an hour. But just because I can go in for an hour doesn't mean you ought to go in for an hour. You're not there. And I'm not even better. So he convinced them, and they ended up dying. You have to know people's beliefs before you offer anything to them. That's why I don't offer
Know thyself.
Yeah.
That's what Frank and I are saying with this.
We want to verify onto what we're talking about here is the principles and the physics of it, not what to do with it. That's up to you. Honor your beliefs. You know, because this is why people who take drugs get in trouble, and this is why people who take drugs don't. I don't know the belief of the person that died from them. So that's why I don't know your beliefs, so I would never say try this. But when someone's talking about it passionately, I'm like, well, how do you feel about it? Well, I'm a little nervous. Well, if you're a little nervous, you're going to have a disruptive experience within that. So get to a point where you're not nervous, or find another method. Are you nervous about meditation? No, I just don't think it works. Find another method. This is what we're talking about. There's a plethora of modalities, thank you, that will get you to where you want to go. Guess what? You're already there. You're already there. How do you know something feels good? Because the essence of who we are feels good.
It's our natural state.
It's a natural state. So, yeah, so it's not that we're talking you in or out of something. We just want to share the principles. It's up to each individual to choose what they, and I honor that. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to anything.
There isn't.
I just don't know what's right or wrong for anybody else other than me at the moment in which I'm in. And the moment in which I'm in, this might be right, but tomorrow it might not be. And if you're trying to keep track of me, I'm going to look like a flip-flopper, but I'm not. I'm continuously expanding. But in the expansion, you can't measure it. You can't measure something that's moving other than the speed at which it's moving. Because once you, and even then, once I solidify it where it's at, I stop it. But you measure it. The speed can speed up or slow down. Everything's shifting and changing. At what point did I measure it? Yeah.
I think we can just kind of tiptoe or jump off the edge into this one. So
tiptoe, yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, but I'll lead us into it.
There you go.
The most simple way I guess I can say this is thoughts create time. Time is an illusion. Time is something that is created, that's experienced. Time has no meaning. It's a concept that was created by us. And so the only thing that creates time is thought.
Yeah. And that's it. So when you break it down, so scientists then will say, like, you know, Einstein came in and, with general relativity and understood gravitational pull and fabric time. So he coined the phrase, I believe it was him that said, it's space-time.
Oh,
so,
that was Einstein?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So general relativity. And so what Sir Isaac Newton did with gravity, Einstein, it's not that Einstein dismantled it. He gave a different outlook onto it. So what I mean is when there's a mass in a fabric, it actually puts a bend in the fabric. So when you look at time, what is time? Based off of like a pendulum. So if a pendulum goes to 1 second, 2 seconds, well, a pendulum swings based on the gravitational field. So gravity is caused by mass and there's probably physicists out there like this guy has it all wrong, but this is how I come to understand it. So if there's mass in fabric, it's bending the space that. If the fabric of time, it's bending it, kind of like if you had a stocking, you put a ball in it, you'd bend it. But further away from the ball, it's still flat because there isn't the gravitational pull of the mass in it. So in that's where the time. But you go where there's less mass, time slows down dramatically. So gravitational pull.
Presence, true presence.
Yeah. So we can be in this gravitational field of pull, and I can go into a meditation and be present. I can literally slow time. And I was reading this. I don't know if it's true or not because I'm not a biologist who studies this, but they were saying if you're at work doing a task and 8 hours goes by, but you felt like it was only 2 hours, well, your biological clock only aged 2 hours, even though someone was keeping score of the time and it's 8 and you're ready to go home. So I find that to be interesting. So it's kind of slowing down the field of time. And when you look at it down, we associate time with the deterioration of the body, and it's not really true, because for everybody else in the room it was 8 hours. For you, it was only 2, and you identify. I'm like, yeah, it's 5 o'clock in the evening, but yet it felt like 2 hours. And they say if they were able to measure your biological shift, you only what we call aged 2 hours rather than the 8. So you're still within the field of 8 hours. You're not denying that. So it's a very interesting concept. So time is then, what is time? Time doesn't cause anything. It's a measure of things. Just like the measuring tape doesn't cause this table to be 2 foot or whatever it is. The table just happens to be 2 foot because the measuring tape tells me that. So remember that time doesn't cause me to be old. It just measures the fact that I'm old.
It's kind of like helping keep the thoughts together.
It's
how I kind of look at a time.
It's almost like this. It's like a football field. What makes a football field? 1,000 yards by 50 yards.
But that's why thoughts are continuous. People are like, oh, I hate the thoughts. I want no thought. Guys, it's not getting rid of thought. Thought will always exist. That's kind of
it's about
the holding it together.
It's about grabbing onto the one single thought and moving with it, and that's what we call contemplation. But what me and Mike are talking about, thoughts that exhaust us. If I think, oh, this is going to be great, well, the polar opposite will have to come into the field.
Oh, what if this happens?
Then this will happen. Boom, boom, boom. So then it's like you're spinning back and forth. You get so tired you don't even feel like moving. But when you grab on,
that is what everyone's so exhausted with dealing with every day. Is the mental struggle. That's why you're exhausted.
But if you grab onto a thought impulse, it's called that a
heart and mind in alignment.
Yeah. So that's a contemplation output. And it's these are just words we're using anyway. But when I look at contemplation as a thought that's moving in a direction, and then see where it takes you. Don't try to figure out where it's going to take you. If you do that, you boom, 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 boom,
There's
boom,
nothing
boom, boom,
to figure out.
No.
Ever.
No. How many times you have to look both ways before you cross the street? Just trust your peripheral vision and look straight ahead where you're walking. It will work. But we go this, we go that way, you turn this way, the car hits me because it was moving so fast. Just look straight ahead. Your peripheral will see a car.
It's a knowing.
Yeah.
It's a
all the parents out there. I just told my kid to look both ways. You silly bastard.
Hey, we've got to unlearn a lot of things that we've been taught since we were growing up.
Yeah. Well, but at our own due pace.
Of course.
There's still but the thing is, I think that's part and parcel of the experience of humanity.
It totally is, but it's also what's keeping us or keeping us from that awakened state that we know everyone is capable of achieving.
But if you weren't sleeping, how would you wake?
That's true.
So you need it's
kind of like your crash course.
Yeah, even the awakened state is due to the laws of polarity.
And so what is the awakened state, guys? When Frank and I say that, it is the complete absence, or I shouldn't say complete, it is the absence of thought. It is the awakened state is the elimination of mental commentary.
Or the awareness of what's going on.
Absolutely.
So if I was once not aware, the awareness becomes the awakened state. So in the true awakened state, I actually welcome the unawareness. Because in order for me to wake up, I must be sleeping. So then I enjoy the sleeping just as much as the awakening. And this is in the physical duality world, all is good. If you're just looking and hanging out and awakening, and you get back into the problem of, I only want to feel good. Well, what's good? This high exhilaration. Well, you look pretty silly at a funeral in the physical world. Or at church, you're running around. Be okay. So the goodness in everything is the peace we're searching for. So I have peace, whether I'm awakened or not. And that's the ultimate awakening.
And you can be at peace at any given moment.
Yeah.
There's no moment, no death, no family trauma, no pain that can ever take away
or even excitement,
or eliminate your chance of peace. But that's a thing. Some people think they don't deserve peace. They're not worthy of peace because I must have this in order to be at peace. That's all conditioned thinking.
Yeah.
None of that is true. That's all mental noise. And that's what Frank and I are pointing out.
Yeah, but whenever I'm in front of someone that actually makes that statement, I'm like, that's impossible. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, you obviously know what peace is if you want it. So therefore, you must have it. So therefore, you were deserving of it. You wouldn't be able to use the word peace if you didn't have an understanding of it. So therefore, if you could say, I want to be at peace, it means you must have been there at some point. Therefore, you obviously deserve it. If there's something you don't deserve, it doesn't exist, why do you even care? But everything you want to experience, you have at some level. Therefore, you are deserving. You're just playing this flip-flop game of hide and seek. But putting my hands over my eyes doesn't make me disappear. It makes the world disappear.
So when you slow down, when you begin to let go, when you begin to just be, and you feel this serenity, when you feel this peace, you start to experience very peaceful interactions with people. You meet great people. Things are exciting. Life is, you begin to appreciate the flowers outside your door when you leave that morning. You look at the, neighbor who cut you off and you forgive him and realize he was probably in a hurry.
Or like everyone's great. That guy just might be a great asshole.
Seriously. So you start to see, oh my goodness, I can let go of all of these little things that were in my head before, saying, no, you don't have time to look at those flowers. Oh, can you believe that neighbor, how he would do something like that? Does he know who you are? All of this is just noise.
And actually, because we're like an actor and persona within our own story, but also we're at the same time with a director. So if you ever watch, if you ever been on a movie set where you're watching a director direct the characters, well, the characters are playing within the field of emotions onto each other, but the director isn't. The director doesn't care if this person's angry at this person. They want that interaction, but they don't get involved with their emotions into it. So the director is just literally directing for the sake of the story, but the persona part of the character wants to get upset at that. So understand we are the director and the persona. So start directing persona.
We are this. We are that. We're not this or that. This and that.
Yeah. And we're
same concept.
So we are also the producer who put the damn show together that I don't like the show. I'm like, hey, you signed off on it.
Kind of playing a huge part.
You raised the money for it. You signed off. Your name's right there. What are you going to do?
But that's the thing. That's why we're the case of the dog chasing its tail. We're ourselves holding our other self underwater. We think that the world is happening to us.
No.
And no, it's a mere reflection of us.
Yeah, it is. And once a director can whisper into the actor's ear, say, hey, I like what you did there, but let's shift the perspective in this set and do that. And all of a sudden, they do it. And then what happens is, in this field, I can roll back and start to look at how my persona acted. And so, on the movie sets when they're shooting, they'll do daily. So they'll have daily clips, and sometimes the actor will be pulled in to say, "Hey, you see that? Okay." Now the actor's like, "Oh, I see what's going on there," but before I couldn't really see it. So when you are the director and the actor at the same time, you could see everything at once. And this is a state,
the awakened state.
I fall into it and I fall out of it a lot. There's times I find myself in an argument, and I'm like, the director's like, "Dude, cut, stop." And I'm like, I keep going, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, and I'm like, oh my God.
But that ego also serves a purpose.
Well, yeah.
And that's the thing. We all have an ego. We all have. It's what we're talking about is be awakening to that, becoming aware of it, and understanding. Oh, I don't have to think that way. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I can just be. When the storm is out of control. Outside, you can't stop the storm, but you can change how you're feeling about that storm. You start to slow it down
and then
here, then you'll begin to find your peace.
And then you actually move into what we call the eye of the storm, where the storm exists, but you're not affected by it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you actually get into an eye of a storm, it's calm, but yet you can see the swirling. But if you don't move with the storm, you get caught up in it.
You see it for what it is, the occurrence around, but it doesn't need to affect the experience itself.
No, you can actually stay in the eye of the storm.
Yeah, it's part and parcel. You can't have everything always being amazing, love and rainbows and all that. Well, actually, you can always have love. I guess what I'm saying is,
well, you can. You just
you're
have
going to
to
experience these ebb and flows, and you have to.
Yeah, but why is the ebb and flow bad? Why is that not great?
That's the thing. It's the mind saying this is
or not to
or
happen.
this isn't, and and as soon as you're just
Yeah.
this,
Now, in the world,
just the movement, that's being.
Yeah, in this physical world, we are focused beings. So when I focus on something, it doesn't mean I'm anti the thing that's beside it or next to it or behind it. I'm not, but I'm focused. But I can't focus on every possible thing in the world. But sometimes, I'm like, no, I don't do that. Are you against? I'm like, no, I'm not against it. Like, well, why do you? I'm like, it's a focus. Focus is what makes me feel good, and somehow I'm drawn to this focus thing. I don't really know why I like pizza. I just do. Imagine how to explain to someone, I'm not giving you a pizza until you explain to me why I like pizza. Let that be absurd. But this is how we actually end up in conversations. How do you like that person? Why did you vote for that? How can you think about that way? How could you not? And what they're saying is, you must think like me. And I'm like, that's absurd. It's absurd. You're not wrong and they're not wrong, but where the interference is coming in, you have to understand the concept that they have their viewpoint. Now, that's why I don't really offer mine. If people ask it, I'll say, well, I look at it this way. And like, oh, you're anti. I'm like, no, I'm not anti anything. But I don't have time to be pro everything either. I'm like, come on, But this is why I seldom ever offer up my opinion on something, and nor do I knock anybody's opinion, because I understand the concepts and the principles.
So everybody's behavior is a direct representation of how they feel about themselves. Frank and I, we like to make that super clear with the reflection type of thing. So when you're dealing
saying
with
that I think I'm a joke?
when you're dealing with somebody and you're getting in an argument or a tip or something like that, show your true hand. You show your true cards. Forgive them. Love them.
Well, the way to do it is to understand the principles of it. You don't need to
engage.
Why do we feel bad when someone else disagrees with us?
Because we have been mentally conditioned to believe that if this is not this way, then I am an outcast or I am this. We must think alike. If I'm out of the ordinary, I am not part of... I am not right. I am not correct.
And another level is we don't really believe what we believe.
Yeah.
Because we think they might be right, and they are right, but it doesn't make you wrong. So if I need people to agree with me, it's validating my belief. I'm like, do you really? If you need someone to validate your belief, it's not really a belief. I don't need someone to validate that pizza tastes good. But there are people out there that probably talked out of eating pizza. I'm like, it's shit. Like, I thought you liked it. Yeah, start thinking about it, and I don't really like it anymore. And you realize someone talked you out of liking pizza. That's absurd. Well, that's not even something we ought to discuss.
We got talked out of liking
life. I cannot believe you like pizza. Or, all of a sudden now people are like, oh, my God, I like this. I'm like, do you really? I'm like, is it, you can change your outlook. There's nothing wrong with that. But, I can't remember. It like, I like liver. I'm like, you really like liver? I can't stand liver. Why would you get offended if someone couldn't stand liver or someone like it? I'm like, that's just, it's funny. It's funny. But yet it's equal in saying, I don't like this president or that president. People are like, no, it's not different. It changed. I'm like, no. Like, someone can convince you must eat liver. If you don't, you're going to die. You're not going to have enough iron in your system if you don't eat liver. Someone can convince you that so much that you must stop eating liver and just throwing up every day. Someone can convince me that this person that's in charge of politics is going to affect my life only if I allow it. All right? And if you allow it, you will experience it. So therefore, it's true for you. I'm not saying it's not, but I get into the field where my beliefs sometimes are coinciding with others. A lot of times they are. But when they're not, I don't shift my belief.
Well, let's also to point out, so how do we know that statement is true? That you were just saying about, either way we look at it, this person will make me this way or this will that. Okay, how do we have a Democratic Party and a Republican Party? Both, know in their hearts they are right. And they both live their lives day in, day out, knowing the other party is quote unquote incorrect. but we are still totally fine. We're still producing, living, working together, working in tandem, etc. And we have been for decades.
Yeah.
That shows you that all truths are true. We've got people on the left saying, I can't believe the world's going to end from this. And then we got people on the right saying, can you believe this? Our kids will never have whatever.
But even at some level, that's a small narrative.
All of it's noise.
Yeah.
It's all noise. It's all narrative. It's all only what you allow it to be.
Yeah. And again, I can't really say this and speak for the average person. What I want to believe that the average person is very respectful for other people. Because like the news and the media will amplify what we no longer want to experience. So they'll amplify. They'll take one little subject and they'll blow it up. And people are getting tired of this, right? Like, because why are they choosing this over that? Like, why are they talking about this incident, not that? It's because it fits their narrative at some point. It's like, oh, okay, people get upset. I'm like, no. If you stay within the field of integrity, their lack of integrity, if you want to call it that, won't affect you. But if you run towards the cliff and fall off, just because it was their voice pulling you in there, you're the one who jumped. So we have to be understanding that. But when you look at the world, the sun still came up, the oxygen level's still here. Humanity is at a great point right now. We are collaborative. We are very collective. But people are like, how can you say that? Do you see what's going on in the news? I'm like, I'm aware of disruption. I'm not saying it doesn't. Storms occur, but not every second of every day. If they would, you would think this is the way we live, right? You get a flood. Okay, wow. But there's 65 days a year.
You're right.
Yeah. How many days did you have that major storm? All right. But what we do is we focus on disruption. And there's nothing wrong with that because it brings attention to the normal. But why do we look at disruption as bad? There's something we can learn from it. I'm not saying you have to look at it as great, but there's something good about it. But because we don't understand it, we label it wrong. So if someone doesn't understand me, he must be wrong. I'm like, no. I don't understand everything else, but I don't look at it as wrong. I look at it as interesting. And that's what lets me move into the unknown with this exciting, childlike, scientific mind of exploration rather than I need to know how everything's going to work out before I open that door. I'm like, yeah, good luck with that one.
I'm going to just grab that door and open it.
Yeah, open it and then step in. Why would you think that the universe is against you? Now, if you believe the universe is against you, something's going to occur, and you're going to convince yourself, look, it's against me.
I told you why that was going to happen. That's the reason.
Yeah. Like, look, but why is
Look,
that?
I told you so.
Yeah, why is that bad?
All that is commentary, guys. Mental commentary. Yeah. Back of the head. It's been there. It's not going away. It's something that you've got to draw attention to.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, it lessens and lessens.
Yeah, it's almost like a default mechanism. You automatically go for something's wrong here. So what we're trying to shift here, I'm doing it myself every day, is trying to shift that default mechanism to not like, oh, I don't understand it, so therefore it must be wrong. I don't understand it, so therefore I must explore it. It's a slight shift. You don't mean like, I don't understand it, so it must be exciting. You'll get there, but you don't have to get there from, I don't understand it, so this must be wrong. Go from, I don't understand this, I'm curious about this now. It's a slight shift, but a huge shift. 1%, think about this, if the Earth axis tilted 1%, our climate would completely change. Completely change. You don't need that big of a percentage of shift and change something. You don't need a complete 180 to change your life. Just a 2 degrees to the left and 2 degrees to the right will do it. And then the momentum picks up. Then you're like, oh, I understand this. Because we're here to explore the unknown. But people are trying to create the known around them all day, and we wonder why we're aging. We wonder why we're miserable. Even someone is depressed takes antidepressants, and all of a sudden, 5 years later, doc, this pill isn't working anymore. It's not going to continue to work in the same way because of expansion. I need a new medication. Even that shows you, because if the pill was truly empirically true, you would never need to change it. But you do. Why? It's no longer working. What's going on?
Must be something.
You might gain a tolerance for it, you know. and I'm just using that as an example. But we don't know. But why would we think it was bad? Why would the universe give us something that was wrong? Just because we don't understand it. And there are things that we didn't understand in the past. We came to understand, oh, shit, that is good for you. Oh, my God. And even that poisonous plant, there was something good about it for you. It wasn't mean you were supposed to eat it. You're supposed to do something else with it. Oh. So when you don't understand something, I'm not saying jump off the cliff thinking you can fly. You know, throw a rope ladder down. Walk down the thing. Take your time down. Whatever process, whatever belief structure you have, honor it. Utilize it. But utilize it understanding the experience of the principles that we're talking about. You can shift it at any time. And therefore, you will start to slowly expand your belief in the direction which you want to go. Because your belief will always expand. If you think life sucks, you hold on to that, life is going to really suck a year from now.
Absolutely.
And then, oh my God, it's going to be so dreadful 5 years from now. The time you get into your 80s, holy hell, it's going to be so miserable. You're going to sit on the front porch with a shotgun and shoot every kid that comes by singing Dixieland.
Yep. Guys, that's the truth.
Yeah. It's because that's expansion. It goes in the either direction within the laws of physics. Physics doesn't care.
What you focus on, you will experience.
Yeah. So just keep in mind, you know, what your belief is. Honor it. Wherever your belief is. Like, oh, I need to change my belief. I'm like, no. Just honor your belief.
Know that there's nothing to change.
No. But the belief, it naturally changes.
Yeah. But I mean, saying, oh, I got to do this.
Yeah. Because you don't even know what you're doing.
That's it.
Yeah.
Just kind of take a step back.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to walk into this.
Yeah. Step back. Honor it. And how do you know your beliefs? By experiencing life. Like I could say, I believe if I saw a bear, I would not be scared. Until you walk in the woods and you see a bear. When you see the bear and you react, now you know your belief. Now, from that point, the next time you see a bear, you can alter the belief expansion. But if you've never really been in a situation where there's a bear, you really don't know. Your subconscious knows. But until you have the experience. So being truthful is like, I don't know if I'm scared or not, so let me enter into the woods with caution. You know, this is what keeps us on the path of excitement, but not too tethered to not ever walk in the woods, you know. So, yeah, life is interesting. Life will show you what you believe, and if you don't like what you believe, then you could start expanding that belief. But nothing else. I can talk about my beliefs, but life will show me my belief. When I get it going to the gym, I could say, oh, I can lift 300 pounds. But then when I go to lift the weights off the rack and it crashed onto my chest, my belief tells me something different. Mm-hmm. Now, is it possible to lift 300 pounds? Absolutely. But now I have to find the frequency that allows me to do that. So I have to expand the belief in which I'm in. Because that belief is subconscious. I could say, yeah, I can do it. But, yeah, the body's going to really, in the physical world, the body's is king in that setting. The queen is where everything's born from. So the queen is the possibility. The king is no. So the queen is going to expand the king. This is why the queen can move all over the chessboard. But the king is still, yeah, I can only move this way or that way, you know? So when you marry the two together, this in the physical world, it's this and that, all of a sudden these principles start to come play, and all of a sudden you feel like you have control of your life in the direction, but yet you still don't know how. Like when I go to a movie, I choose whether it's a drama, a comedy, a horror, but I don't have control of the output, nor do I want that control. I want to experience it. But there are controls I have, how I perceive it.
And that's us in our daily lives.
It is our daily life.
Do you want to wake up and experience a tragedy, or do you want to wake up and experience, you know, the underdog
Every
taking
morning
over?
feels like a tragedy. Like, holy shit, it's morning again.
Oh,
yeah.
That's the thing. That's because the commentary back in full force.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like I don't have a clock in my room, but I'll lay in bed and I have Alexa in there. So yeah. I wake up in the morning. It depends what time of year it is, because like in the summer it's easy because the light comes up early, but when it starts shifting, I'm like, oh, it's dark. I'm like, Alexa, what time is it? the time is now 4:38. I'm like, oh, it's time to get up. Like, I didn't know if it was time to get up or not yet. It's funny. I still fall into that programmable aspect. I'm like,
Absolutely.
yeah, like, the universe just opened your eyes. It's time to get up. I'm like, no, let me ask Alexa if it's time to get up. Alexa knows. She knows me.
Gotta ask.
Yeah. I should get Alexa, hey, it is 4:38. Please get your ass out of bed.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That is the truth, though.
Yeah.
We rely on outside factors to tell us,
Yeah.
yes, this is real.
And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's part and parcel of the experience of what you're having. But realize they're really not the causation of it. The causation, like I said, goes so deeper than we can actually explain. But that's why we use the pill. So when I say placebo, it doesn't mean you discard it. If you believe that you need the pill, then by all means take the pill. But the problem is someone's always telling you, oh, the pill's going to kill your liver and stuff like that. And if you buy into that, you might want to expand onto using something else. This is why everything's always shifting and changing. Now we're getting to holistic medicine. Again, that's a placebo as well. Yep. But if holistic medicine says there are no side effects, that's path-least resistance for me. But then someone will say, well, there is side effects. If you take too much of anything, it's going to hurt you. Okay. So I was like, holy shit.
That's the thing. There's no way to win the mind. The mind always continues to keep going. Just over here. You'll feel at peace right after this.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Actually, you need to stop doing that and do this.
Yeah.
See it all for what it is.
Yeah.
It's simply the mind at work.
Yeah.
Everything is working exactly like it should. We're watching the thoughts pass by, just like the clouds that they are.
And as it works as it should, how we grab a sequence, if it's working for us, is in the field of synchronicity and how we started the show off. All right, and that's the shift of perspective we offer.
Thanks for joining us tonight, guys.
Yeah, same here.
We'll see you next week.
You got it. All right. If you like what you see, go down to the bottom of the show and click it.
Yeah, subscribe now.
And, peace out.
Thanks, guys.
All right.